Hello and welcome to the tailgate party of your dreams. The numbers are always sound and the drinks are always flowing. I'm Ebube and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. Today, I'm joined by long lost co host Jibbz, who is back from the ether,
Back from the
back
ether, back from the
again.
ring, back from sort of.
He
I
has
feel like
been
that.
through the ringer,
I feel like
more
that
so than our
Undertaker.
characters. They have nothing on him, trust me.
I feel like that
And
Undertaker meme where I just sort of rise up again from the dead.
exactly. He is here to share his thoughts on Succession's seventh episode of his fourth and final season, titled "Tailgate Party." So, Jibs, how you feeling? What was this episode like for you?
Holy fuck, man! What an episode! This is probably my favorite episode of the season.
Really?
There was
Okay.
there was a
Beats
lot
out
that
episode
happened.
three.
Just beats out episode 3, I think. I don't.
Okay.
I watched this 3 times, man. It was. I just really
Wow.
enjoyed it.
Okay. Okay.
It was. I mean, we'll get to the bits and bobs of the episode, but damn, one episode, man. And
Truly.
I mean, it was a terrible day. It was a shitty day. But I just watched the episode and everything just went to me. I was kind of like, yes, yes, this is prestige TV.
Right. This is exactly what we
Yeah,
signed up for.
this is what we this is exactly what we need, man. HB is looking out for us.
Exactly. What would you say was the main theme of this episode in your mind? Did it have to do with, you know, protecting the company? Did it have to do with delay and obfuscation? Did it have to do with kind of making connections, keeping connections? Did it have to do with the election? I think it was a lot of things, but I feel like one thing that kept moving as a through line through this episode was just, I guess, concealment. Everybody was trying to hide something.
That's kind of what I was going to say as well. Like, I, I mean, listeners of the Popcorn for Dinner podcast always hear me say the best part or the best thing about TV movies. I mean, the car chases are good, action scenes are great, shootouts are great, dragons are not too bad. Who like dragons in their TV? But the
Hmm.
best thing about TV, the fundamentals of TV, is two people in a room talk. Somebody leaves that conversation and talks to somebody else, and it's like, oh, okay, conflict arises,
Hmm.
and now you have you know something to work, something to look forward to in the next minute, the next episodes, next season, on how is that conflict going to be resolved. And I feel like we just got that in this episode where just put everyone in the same in the same apartment and just let everyone cook, man. Let's just have multiple conversations about let's see how these dynamics are changing,
Exactly.
and what is the result of this conversation, where is this going to lead to.
Powder keg.
And and I'm just like, this is for me, this is just for me, honestly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's honestly how you know these things tend to feel so real, because
hmm
in very realistic situations, like most of the coolest or most pivotal things in life tend to happen when real people just get left in a space. And I like it when a
hmm
show is well developed enough that the writers can just say, all right, we put these characters together, we know who
hmm
they are,
hmm
enough that they know who they are. Let's just leave
yeah.
them in a space and see what happens. And
And
realistically, the way they bounce back and forth each other is just amazing.
that's an interesting point, because it's sort of, if you have an idea of these characters, so you have an expectation of how they should act, but you're still sort of waiting for how they're going to surprise you, or
Yeah.
are they going to act against or even further past your expectations. And that's kind of why we watch these TV shows, isn't it? And I feel this um
Hmm.
Succession, especially this episode, it just does a great job on. Can't believe you have 2 episodes left, man. I mean, I always say things should end at the right time, but can you squeeze in a cheeky 2 seasons more, please? I want to spend the rest of my 20s and 30s with these lot, man. This is just great shit, honestly.
Yeah, man. I just, yeah.
it's it's great. What did you think about the episode then? What did you?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was just amazing to see how these people mess each other up inadvertently or intentionally. The episode itself was very well put together. The
Hmm.
direction, whenever you have something like this with so many different clashing personalities, you have to have like really good direction, and the dialogue
Hmm.
has to be on point because we spend the entire place or the entire time almost in one place, right? And
Hmm.
these characters all have agendas. Some people, like
Hmm.
Shiv, for example, get to a point where they start to wonder, is my agenda even helpful to me? you know, all this time I've been asking Shiv, what are you doing? Like, why are you even doing what you're doing? Do you actually even know anymore? And now she starts to ask herself that question, and that is very funny to me.
I think this was the first time. I really don't know why I didn't think about this early on, but I was I was just asking myself, why is Shiv helping out Matson? Why is she going to this degrees to ring Matson immediately after the boys tell her
She
that they
didn't
want
even
to
waste
invite them
any
into
time. Like, have
no
some,
time.
have some
I was kind
chill.
of like, gosh, this is so desperate, man. And what is the game plan here? What are you planning to do? And I feel this is the first episode where I realized that I finally clocked that I don't think
She knows what
I'm
she's
kind of
doing.
projecting here, but no, I don't think any of the kids know what. I think probably Kendall a little bit, but the rest of them are just completely don't really know what they're doing, man. They're kind of playing a different game.
Yeah. I think with Shiv especially, it's like the reason she would want to do any of this at all is just, well, I think there are two main reasons. It's,
Hmm.
I want to be on top. My brothers don't want me to be on top, so I'm going to seize that somehow and quote unquote win the game. Again,
Hmm.
I've said this before. These people could be doing literally anything, but they're still choosing to fight for daddy scraps, I guess. And the other reason is her own agenda of what she can control and what she likes. She is not an
Okay.
ATN fan, right? And she knows that if Matson
No.
comes in, they're probably going to change or dismantle or I don't know, whatever the case may be with ATN.
Hmm.
On some level, it was like, okay, we get rid of ATN. If we sell and Matson wants ATN, then like, good, we don't have to hold on to it anymore. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a world where ATN isn't one of their assets, she is probably, she feels anyway, best suited to lead the company in
Hmm.
to lead the company instead of her brothers, especially Roman, who
Yeah.
probably would be, I think, the better one at actually like running
He'd be
ATN
full
because
on.
yeah, he
He'd
just
be
wants to
full
keep
on.
things going as they are. Kendall thinks he's a
Yeah.
game changer. Like he wants to make things work. He wants to um make an impact on the world, whatever the case may be. He's slightly delusional, but I guess when you're at that level,
Very, in my
it requires a
opinion.
little bit of delusion.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. I'm quite conflict. I'm not really sure about Shiv. I'm not really sure why she wants. I guess. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with you on that. But there's still like the whole her and Tom dynamic. I mean, we'll talk about that scene
Hmm.
at the end of the episode, which is just amazing. It's kind of just vocalizing all their thoughts and insecurities and everything, and that was just an amazing scene. So I think this episode sort of gave me both things. So it gave me, you know, one, characters moving from one conversation to the next conversation and trying to get what they can from each and forming their next opinions and their next views based on their past conversation and bringing it to the next one. Plus, it gave me just the scene between um, Shiv and Tom, where I mean it was just part. I mean it's what four? It's 3 seasons, 3.5 seasons of baggage just all let out just like that. And kind of like, wow, are they actually saying all of this? Is this actually happening? Because
Yeah.
when you sort of watch them, it was they never really said all those things, but you could see them thinking it right
Hmm.
all the time. And for them to actually literally screaming out loud to each other. I was kind of like,
I
wow,
was actually
okay, I
even
can't,
worrying that people were hearing them on the other side of the glass. I thought that the
I
show
can't
would
look
tell us
left,
like,
I
oh, are
can't look.
people actually hearing them? Like, but no, they didn't
I
pull
just
that on
have to
us.
look at my TV. just have to look at my TV screen right now because I just have to focus. There's nothing else to look at right now. And I mean, what a scene to end
Yeah,
the episode on.
it's this episode was actually directed by Shari Springer Berman and Robert Polcini, who are a sort of filmmaking team that have made a bunch of interesting things. Um,
Hmm.
they've done work on a wide range of stuff, and even on TV, they've worked on We Crashed, which is a show about WeWork, which I mentioned last week, that I watched on Apple TV Plus. And they've actually done at least one episode of Shameless, I think. For Succession, they are the ones who directed the Safe Room episode and the Lion in the Meadow episode where Logan and Kendall go to Josh Aaronson's island at the same time to convince him to stay invested despite all the tumult that's going on in the company and his
Hmm.
financials due to what they are doing and their own personal feud. And, these guys clearly seem to be very good at getting people with clashing ideologies together in one place and trying to make them
Good old.
operate for like one or two shared goals and just hoping things don't implode. I mean, there's just so many different personalities here, like people you might not even expect to see, but it makes sense
Hmm.
to see them here for one reason
Yeah.
or another. Like Nate, for example, what does Nate do in this situation? Look at all the people
Hmm.
that they're laughing with. How does Tom reacts to people kissing up in his house, right? What
Hmm.
about the the Swedes? How's all that going? And yeah, don't worry, we'll get to the
Oh
Swedes,
man,
but
I was going to ask about, because correct me if I'm wrong. You've been involved in directing short movie before, haven't you?
I have,
With
yes,
uh,
with Shadi.
what's that like then? Because I'm always sort of directed by this and this, and I'm sort of like, how does that work? How do you make that team work?
It's about a shared vision. um
Mm,
Direction really is just what do we want and how do we get there, right? Once we figured out what we want, like if it's something like this with a work of fiction, what we want is
hmm.
typically decided in the writer's room, right? Then the
Okay.
directors sort of think, okay, what else do we want and how do we bring all of this to life? Like, how do we practically translate this from page to screen? What are the decisions we have to make? What are the things that have to realistically happen? What do we need to remove?
Hmm.
We just think
Hmm.
of like all these different things and we figure out what's possible. And
Hmm.
then you kind of convey that vision to everybody who's working on the project,
Yeah.
whether it's like the actors and you listen to like their input and such, or it's production design, it's the
Hmm.
producers or whatever. You kind of make it clear what's needed. So typically in filmmaking, they would say that the film is the director's film. They would say something like a film like a film by Martin Scorsese, a film by Steven Spielberg, things like
Hmm.
that, because that
Hmm.
person has the vision of what's going to happen, and what has happened. So I think it's a good thing when you have a shared vision. When there are big creative differences, then you have an issue. I mean, clearly, these two people are still doing this together after a long period of time, and Shadia and I still work on
Hmm.
quite a few projects. So I think
Hmm.
that vision is really the thing, and it's all. I know obviously that means communication because people aren't really psychic, right? To keep that vision alive and to keep
Yeah.
it centered, you have to constantly exchange ideas on what's actually happening. Yeah.
Because I think most of like the partnerships, directive partnerships that we are aware of are mostly siblings,
Yeah,
aren't
they
they?
tend to
Like
be
the
because they can put up
Wachowskis,
with each other.
Safdies, the Coens, like the have to put up
Neistat's,
with
yeah.
each other mandatory. So it's kind of like if you're not like siblings, so how does that work? But I guess it's all about having a shared vision and not having huge
Yes.
egos. And I mean, you can see the results in this episode, can't
Yeah,
you?
exactly. And you know
Can you?
what? Speaking of huge egos, I think I'm going to go right to the beginning of the episode and stroke mine because if there's anybody on this internet who's trying to protect Kendall's kids, it's me. Yeah, I'm sure everybody who listens to this podcast was watching this episode and thinking he's going to come here and talk about Kendall's kids, isn't he? Yes, he is. Here
Mhm.
I am. What did you expect?
Let him cook.
Kendall is exactly like his dad in this situation. He's like, I'm going to do everything I can to protect her, whatever it takes. What kind of
Hmm.
parent do you think I am? I'm breaking my back. I'm changing the world. The work I'm doing is affecting 6 continents, and it's all for them, all for your kids. All right, Tywin
Do you
Lannister.
know who
I mean,
he sounds like? He actually sounds like. Remember that episode? I can't remember if season 1 or season 2 where they went for that
yeah,
retreat
everything
and they were all sat.
I've done for my
Yes,
children.
and I was kind of like,
You sound
you sound
exactly like
like
him. You think
exactly
you're
like your
different
dad,
from
man.
him, but you actually sound exactly.
And it's like,
I think that's the one thing Kendall is like has really nailed Logan down to, and he doesn't even know it. It's just the parenting style of thinking,
mhm,
deluding yourself into believing everything you're doing is for your children, and then you don't spend a single moment with them. You're not interacting with them.
neglecting them
I mean,
completely.
Rava has had to
It's
raise these kids basically on her
honestly
own.
crazy.
People get
Probably had to raise Kendall as
yeah,
well, didn't
on
she?
some
Like,
level, yeah,
because he
because
had
people get mad at
problems.
Rava
Yeah,
sometimes when she shows
yeah.
up in episodes because she, they say she's petty, she's vindictive. On some level, she is. I mean, Rava is not a perfect person, and she does throw his addiction at him sometimes, which is not great. But when you look at it from her,
Not
yeah, when
great.
you look at it from her perspective, it's like she's had to manage
She's
him,
probably
manage the
had a lot
effects
to
of that
deal with.
addiction
Yeah,
on the kids. She said before, like in an earlier episode, that she once had to wipe off cocaine from one of their kids' iPads, right? And which
yeah.
means like, how does that
That's
even happen? It's either the cocaine is flying around or he was using the iPad to snort cocaine, right?
definitely using it on
Exactly.
the
So
iPad. Yeah,
that's like a whole host of things that she's had to
it's
deal with as
insane.
a parent. And he's saying, what kind of parent do you think I am? And if you watch that episode, that part of the episode again, you see she turns around when he says that, and she's just like, okay. Like, you can see just to hear the disbelief. She's even chuckling. She's like, all right, bro,
It's tired.
enjoy
Yeah.
your day.
I mean, there was the point. There was a point where he was asking her, "I need all the pieces of information to,
Like, where were you?
so
What do you mean, where was
so I
I?
can make a decision." I was like, "What the hell do you think? This is not like some board meeting, man. These are your kids."
She's
Ask all the
like,
pieces
dude,
of
just call
information
your
so you can make
daughter.
a
Like,
decision. I was like, get up here,
I,
Rowan. Get up here, Kendall.
it's crazy
Sorry, I
because
mean Rommel.
yeah,
Get to Rommel.
because like the people who are doing this, ironically, might even be people who watch them. They're saying that it's like, it's people
Oh
who are
boy,
very like fired up. They might have been racially motivated, and it's like, man, I don't know anymore.
I read literally. I'm not sure. There was like this big Fox News versus Dominion voting lawsuit that just got resolved. I think they had to pay like $1 billion or
Close
something.
to
So
it,
I
yeah.
just went properly rabbit hole into the Murdoch family, man, and I am pretty sure they watch Succession.
That'd be cool.
Did you hear about like when Rupert divorced Jerry Hall because she used to
Mhm.
watch Succession? Apparently she had to go into like a different room in the house to watch
Hmm.
Succession. And apparently when they got divorced, it was part of the divorce papers that she was not to contribute at all to the Succession
What kind
script.
of
Can you believe
paranoia
that?
is that?
Can you actually believe that?
That is insane. That's actually insane.
Then
Especially since it's
there's
not
a
just
whole
him.
effigy.
It's not just
Yeah,
like, because there's a lot of Sumner Redstone as well in
yeah.
Logan,
There's
right? A big part of it, that
mhm.
guy was violently against
Beefing
his
with his
daughter
kid.
taking over from him. I,
Yeah, she had
I
to sue him, didn't she? And she lost.
at the beginning, but in the end, she managed to make sure she was the one who took over. She's the one who's actually runs Viacom CBS now.
Oh, is she
Yeah,
running it now? I thought she got offered a non-exec
she
and
did,
she
but at the
declined or
at like
something.
she ended up running it right at the beginning, I believe, and
Hmm.
right till the very end, he was trying to say that he was willing to do it. Like, this man is literally on life support, saying, "Yeah, I'm fine." Just the general delusion of I can handle anything, kind of like Logan. He was always trying to be seen with
Hmm.
20-year-old girls, um, basically trying to seem strong, virile, whatever the case may be, and those women that he was hanging around with almost tore the company apart, like destroyed it. He had like maybe 4 carries, like 3 or 4 carries that really would have destroyed the
Wow.
business. I think they might have made together, after he died, made off with a little over $150 million um, of real money. I don't even know how they
Sheesh.
managed to secure that. And they would have torn the business apart. His daughter was able to step
That's
up along with some
mental.
other executives and see things through. But yeah, don't worry, Rupert. It's not just you that they're coming for.
Well, Rupert's mom, I think she lived up to 103, so, and I think he's only like
Yeah, he's a little
92
bit
now or
over
something.
90.
So
Um,
he's
yeah,
got, he's got some years left. But apparently he's not in good health. But anyway, yeah, Kendall, man, what, what? But he's still, because I mean, his dynamic sort of changed in this
hmm
episode where, I mean, terrible, terrible dad. Then he's trying to scheme politic to bring Nate in for regulation,
yeah,
anti-competition. To because obviously his end goal is to tank the
hmm
Gojo deal, isn't it? That's kind of what he wants because he wants to stay in power. So he's doing everything he can, inflating the price, the share price because of like the Living Plus success, which went well. Then he's trying to bring in government regulation now to basically what he wants is he wants the government to say that this deal is anti-competitive because
exactly. Not
it's
him really
against
trying to
our
seek out
it's yeah
antitrust.
no it's anti-competitive and there's going to be a monopoly here and he's trying to convince Nate um about this so he can block the deal. So what do you think about
Yeah, I
all
was
of
even going to
that?
ask you, like, this idea of Nate being able to actually help them with creating the general presence of regulation, right? Um,
Hmm.
Obviously, Nate works with Gil, and Gil is a senator on the committee that handles general, media affairs and such. He would and
Tech as
tech,
well, I
so he
think.
would be yeah,
Or
so
is it
he would be in
anti-tech? Yeah.
charge of that kind of regulation. So having Nate
Hmm.
around basically kind of makes it feel like they're open to that regulation. It sends a message that
Hmm.
they have nothing to hide, and they want regulators to come in and look at the deal. Which is why Shiv then calls Matson, because if Matson is around, then he can kind of you know be on his best behavior, put forward like a good act for the quote unquote regulatory personalities. However, Nate's his appetite for this kind of stuff is I think maybe he's reached the point where, like, he's the one person in the show that's reached the point where it's like, look, I'm tired of you guys. I'm, I'm, I'm just
It's
tired.
like I'm going
I
home,
mean, it's
man. I'm
just funny
just
because when he
yeah,
arrives at this party, right, Tom walks right up to him and hands him a glass of wine, which is beautiful because the last
yeah,
time Tom encountered Nate, he made him pour his wine back into the bottle, right, at the wedding.
yeah. And this was the wedding season one,
Episode 9,
episode
yes.
9.
And
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and of course, that wine that everybody's drinking today is great, depending on who you ask. I mean, it's either light and fruity or it's like wet
Well,
dog.
it said you shouldn't tell anyone it's German wine.
Yeah,
Apparently,
you should
I'm
not,
just like
so to speak. um yeah,
German wine. Is that a
I
thing?
don't even know for Tom anymore. Like,
What?
it's just I just don't get it. I mean, the fact that they're even
I mean,
having this party
I'm not a wine connoisseur, but I've never heard of German wine
light and fruity. But he
before.
just kept, like, Tom just can't help himself. Like, whenever that wine is involved, it's like it's like, okay.
Just keep Tom away from wine because he had his own. Was that from his
I would assume
vineyard?
it's from there, yeah. Which is why he's like talking about it. It's just like it was just like his parents in that wedding episode. They just the one thing they were really able to contribute to the wedding was the wine, and they just wouldn't stop telling people that. So everybody ended up knowing. So
No, it came from Tom and his
yeah, I
family.
mean, the fact that they're having the party here, in their house. First of all, that residence I really like. There's something about Tom and Shiv's residence that feels very hotel lobby to me. It's very sharp spot. Like, it looks
Hmm.
like you're in this central place that leads to a bunch of other places, because, like, they have like a side that looks like a loft. They have like different places where people are entering, so you're not even really sure where
Hmm.
the front door is. There's just so much going
Hmm.
on in that regard. Just in terms of placement.
So where will that be? Manhattan then? I'm guessing like Hell's Kitchen and somewhere around that
Maybe there,
area.
or Upper East Side, yeah, just like general Upper East
Oh,
Side.
Bruce side, yeah.
Because, well, it seems like a new place to me. They have like interesting art in the building. Logan's place is like, it feels a bit more, I guess, closer to vintage. Like, the way it's designed, the general
Hmm.
elements. There's a lot more woody stuff in there, whereas Thomas Shiv's place has lots of ceramic and glass and metal elements, and I think that's pretty cool. They're able to have this
Mm.
huge
More of
space.
like a new
Yeah.
build sort of thing. Yeah.
And it's like you
You
think
refurb,
having
yeah.
all these people, some of the most powerful people in the country, in your house, you're like, this is such an intimate space. But then these people are raised with the idea of you have to be able to host. You buy these places with these big
Yeah.
living rooms partly because you know of things like this. If Logan was still alive, they'd probably have been doing it at his place, right? um
Yeah.
I think the way this place was, it
Well,
felt a little bit, it felt slightly tighter on some level. So I think that that, yeah,
that contribute to like
exactly, it
the
added to just how
claustrophobic sort
weird
of
things were,
nature.
especially
Yeah.
for people like Eba, who I really feel for. And
Gosh, oh, all the just encounters with her and Matt. Is a weird guy, but like when it's just her and so is it
it's
ever
Eba, I believe. Yeah,
ever?
I
Yeah.
literally will be think.
So
Sometimes I'm thinking, wow, some people are watching this thinking like, yo, is her name actually Gary? It's it's crazy.
just all their encounters just make me really uneasy, man. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm just like, what is going to come out of this guy's mouth now? And I know it's going to, because you always have that one colleague who is kind of like,
Too much,
I don't really,
just too much for no
yeah, it's
reason.
like,
Too
yeah,
much.
I just, I just don't want, yeah, yeah, I like you, but I don't like you like that, and it just make you feel a bit
Yeah,
strange
because he's
sometimes. And that's
relentless.
how Matson,
He's relentless.
he's
He just
just
doesn't stop.
weird, man. What do you call himself? Like a jerk off weird coder or something? Like, cause like, yeah, that's who I am. That's who I am. I mean, Kendall. I mean, you talk about hosting parties. Kendall does that. The one thing that he's really good at is just giving speeches and commanding
Hmm.
the room, right? And when he was sort of doing the intro to the party, and he was like, you sort of touched about all the powerful people in the country. So he spoke, the
Hmm.
crypto fascists, the
The
venture
libtards and
capitalists,
the
then there
Nazis.
was some podcast hosts as well. Some podcast. I was
Yeah,
like,
there's
where? It's like, where's our
I
invite,
actually even
man?
wonder if, like, because he calls out this person who's like, the podcaster person, right? The podcast person. I wonder if that's like
Yeah,
their version of like someone like Kara Swisher or something like that, who actually is doing the official
Karasutra
Succession
or,
podcast right now.
or Joe Rogan.
Um,
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah.
It's hard to say. Though someone like Kara Swisher would never be found in this place for this event, though. Never, ever, ever. She,
Do you not think so?
yeah,
She talks to a lot
yeah,
of
but
famous
she
people and rich
is,
people. I
first of
guess.
all, she's way too blue for this. Um, that's number one, and number two,
So
she
yeah.
would just get annoyed by all. Like Kara isn't afraid to say when she's actually irritated with people. So
No.
I feel like she would kind of be a cross between, I don't know, Nate and, like, she'd kind of be like a Nate in this episode, but like with a little bit more to say, maybe. Yeah,
Would you say like Joe Rogan is a lot more like realistic than in these kind of
I can
parties?
see someone like Joe
He's
Rogan being
he's
here.
more
Yeah, yeah,
free
I
thinker,
can
yeah.
kind of see it.
So I mean, we didn't even really talk about why they're all in this spot. It is the
Yeah,
election eve,
tailgate
isn't it?
party, which
Before
is
the
a big
polls
part of
open.
American culture. Whenever big things happen, whether it's football or the
Hmm.
election, people typically will stay up the day before, and just meet to enjoy things. They have their, you can see these people, they even have their own traditions there. Kendall said, as usual, whoever guesses closest to the actual numbers will get kettle corn meal to them wherever they
Hmm.
are. Clearly they have like a whole
Hmm.
lot of stuff going on with this that they've been doing, and it makes sense that everybody who
Hmm.
shows up, because, like, you want to be here, you want to have your opinion heard, and hear what's going on, especially now that the deal is happening, which
Hmm.
is why Tom's, yeah,
Is it
Tom's, well,
happening?
exactly, happening is happening with a grain of salt. um yeah,
We'll get.
Tom is out here trying to keep his ear to the ground, not just about the deal but about
Oof,
himself,
yeah.
because he's been in a precarious
Last
situation
episode.
all season, well, at least since episode 3, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think now he's trying to figure
So
things out.
what's the election vibe? Is it Mencken is close? Is it sort of 50-50 with the Dems and Mencken is close to
I
winning,
think Mencken
but
is
he
not that
needs
close.
Connor who will get to,
Mencken
he's
Menken's
not
poll
that
numbers are
close.
down at the moment, which is something that they were saying in the episode.
Hmm.
And one thing that would boost it is,
Yeah.
you know, it's crazy how, like, at least 4 million people ish are actually, like, genuinely trying to make Conor Roy president. So Menken's team is essentially saying, look, Conor has no chance. He has 4% spread out in basically four different states. Let him drop out, and those people, because it's the same party, like Connor is also red, those people will probably go to Mencken, and that will strengthen Mencken's claim. I think,
Mm.
asking Connor to drop out of the race is very cold. I mean, it's so hilarious because Roma's, Roma's first reason is
I
like
just loved
for the
it.
good of the Republic, and everybody, like me, you, Roman,
Just starts
Connor, like
laughing.
we're all just dying because what does that even mean? These people caring about the Republic?
There was
Oh
some,
my goodness.
I mean, Succession, there were just some really funny quips
This
here and
episode
there.
was
I mean, we'll get
bants.
to Matson and we'll get to Matson and India later,
My goodness. I mean, the,
but it was so funny how like Connor was the whole negotiation with Connor about like, so what do you think about Mogadishu? What do you think about Oman? And he was like, what do you say? Is a rich man's
that
Yemen or poor man's
killed
Saudi? And I
me.
was like,
Like, yeah.
this is amazing writing, man. Like this is like not to get into the entire Middle East politics, right?
Oh
But
my
this is
god.
insane
And the
writing
fact that
right here.
Maxim is
And it's
still
like,
around. Like the fact that Maxim is still there,
mhm,
like, actually advising him because he promised him the State Department if he wins. So
yeah.
at night they've actually become
Well,
friends,
because
and he has his little family unit because Willa is there too, and she's supporting him. But now he's trying to convince her, hey, should we go to Oman?
support.
Like, as somebody who's lived in the Middle East myself, I just found the whole conversation so funny. Like I was like, what country are they going to say next? Because I mean, him saying, yeah, this Muscat, and then she's like, are we going to live above ground? She's like, oh my goodness. And then they start talking about the UN. That made me laugh even more because, no offense, right, to anybody who has ever held the job of president of the United States, but I personally think the UN requires slightly more work and slightly more brain power because, like, Connor becoming president is more plausible to me. Like,
Do you
no,
think
honestly,
so?
like, not in terms of the actual numbers and what's likely. I mean, in terms of filling that role, just literally because
Durability.
the president
Okay.
is. I mean, obviously, the president has to be a very smart person, but the president of the U.S. doesn't control as much as people think. There is executive power, sure, but you can't just make things happen. It's not an
Hmm.
autocracy, and it's not close to like a constitutional monarchy. It's even as far as presidencies go, he doesn't have that much say over things. Like if you come, I guess that just depends on how.
Half of his
Yeah,
job is literally preparing for speeches
yeah,
and
and
giving speeches,
you
isn't
make
it?
sure
Like,
laws get passed. You try to ensure that they do, but you don't always have that kind of power, as opposed to other styles of government.
mm,
Whereas the UN, the United States ambassador to the UN, is an extremely important job because those people are trying to do a lot of stuff that actually keeps the world from imploding. So, can you imagine Connor
yeah,
actually annoying the people of the UN and then being the first ambassador to of the United States to to the UN that that doesn't do his part to
I'm,
prevent World War III from happening. Like,
I'm pissing off Europe,
oh
pissing
my
off
god!
Asia,
Like,
pissing off Africa, of course. And I really cried at the part when it was like South Korea. I was like, what about North Korea? And he was like, whoa,
yeah,
slow down
yeah.
there.
Maxi was like, my liege, please.
Like, slow down. And it's like, we don't want to send you anywhere with nukes. And it's like, I won't go to anywhere that doesn't have
Oh,
nukes there. And it was just
just gems,
amazing,
gems
amazing,
everywhere.
amazing.
Kendall was saying that we watch history, then we make history, and then we become history. And yeah,
Hmm.
Kendall is
Good
is
speech.
good with speeches like that, and obviously Matson crashes that.
Yeah.
How did you feel when Matson walked in?
I was like, of course, this is when it's going to just, step in and properly get this party started, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, properly, because everything was going too smooth, and it's sort of like, we need a little chink in
exactly.
the armor, don't we? And Matt just sort of walks in. And I don't know, he always had his
I was
shoulders
saying the same thing.
hunched.
This man is
Like,
always, always, always hunched, and I don't think Skarsgård actually really walks like that. I think this is a thing he's doing for the Matson role,
mm-mm,
and I think that is
mm-hmm.
either part of
Yeah,
what
he's
he's
supposed to be a
doing to
goof, isn't
create the,
he?
the guy's presence, or it's just an effect like on a practical level of everyone is shorter than him, so he's just always looking down at people.
Because he's like, what, six, six,
Yeah,
six,
he's
seven,
he's,
isn't
he's
he?
pretty
He's
tall.
freaking giant.
I mean,
And he's such an underrated comedic
yeah,
actor. Like he was insane in this
He
episode,
says
man.
so much crazy
But you can
stuff
sort of see
in this
like
episode.
him blending the insane with like there's a time when he was talking to Nate and the way he was working Nate about how the rest of um the Roy family are just jokes and are you really going to hand are you really going to allow ATN to be run by these clowns except instead of me where I actually got experience with
Hmm.
running a company and everything like these people. And you can see that the more he talks, the more Nate's kind of like, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, the more I think about it, it's like, how can these people actually run the company? They've actually never had any
Hmm.
experience whatsoever like this before. So, that's definitely, would you say that's obviously what convinces Nate to dip, to leave?
Yeah, he's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable from that point.
Or do you feel like um, he was kind of 1 foot out, then Matson just, conversation just sort of pushed him out of the door completely with that conversation?
I think he just realized that this is a situation that can implode on its own, and he just didn't want to be overly involved and looking too cozy with either side because it just doesn't help him too much.
Mm,
Because then there's just so many questions to answer. If something weird happens at this party, then what's he going to say? It's like, okay, Nate Sofrelli was around. It's it's a lot. I mean, obviously, he has a long-standing relationship with Kendall, which is probably how he got into his long-standing relationship with Shiv. But now he's at a
mhm.
point where he just has to think practically, right? And at one point he says to Kendall, you're not Logan, I'm not Gil, and that's a good thing. We don't have to do what these people would be doing. We don't
Mhm.
have to be creating these kinds of these backdoor deals or whatever. Like, let's just live freely, like break free. Yeah,
Let's
I
relax.
think that was
Yeah.
interesting.
And yeah, I mean, kind of answered your point where I think it was the last conversation with Kendall where he was like, I'm not authorized to have this conversation or something along those lines. And and you're like, are you fucking serious right now?
Uh,
I might just wanted to get some free food and leave, man. Which is, I mean, sometimes you just want
yeah,
to get into a free party, say a couple of highs, get a couple of drinks, get some free food and dip. You don't want to, you might not have enough social battery for that day. You just want to walk in and walk out, have your free dinner and dip. So, I mean, you got
yeah.
to
But
understand Nate there, don't you?
the Warriors do have a bit of a strategy,
Uh,
right? You know, at one point Kendall says they're talking about all the people in the room, right? And first of all,
mhm.
as people were arriving, I just saw. I was just thinking, look, wow, look at all these celebrities in black. How original! Like everybody just showing up to this fancy apartment building, and they're being taken up, and
Perhaps.
they're wearing what they're wearing. Like it's like a who's who type of thing, one of those situations. And Kendall does say that Dad's
Hmm.
ideological range was wide. Um, and at first, Kendall is like get
Yeah.
asking Connor to drop out is
Libtard.
just callous, but then Roman's like, well, it would be good to have Mencken on our side in case things actually do go well for him. And then they just immediately drop Connor. It's like, okay, like, you go talk to the libtards. I'll talk to the libtards. You talk to Nazis, which is just like wild, 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 wild things to say. And because so many people are just hitting the chopping block. That's another thing that I felt was a big theme of the episode. Just like
Yeah.
termination, right? You have the idea of like, who's going to be terminated, who's going to still be around after the merger slash acquisition. Um, we have Tom especially worried about that. We have Greg being apparently the resident firer. Like, what is going
I
on?
was going to say, I
He
think,
said, "Oh,
I
thank you,
think
sir,"
Greg,
and then he just gets on a Zoom call with like 100 people, or like just multiple people. He said he's done it multiple times in the same week. He said like 100 people fired in 3 days,
I think Greg literally came out the best in this
even though they were
episode,
calling
which
him
is,
Gary.
I mean, terrible to say the least because, you know, because I mean, he, I mean, it was pretty shitty actually when you see the way he just
Hmm.
reading from the script
And they
and
said that
laying
he
off
he
mass,
looks like he
how
cares
many
even though he
people, and
doesn't,
apparently,
and that's why he's so good at it.
even though he doesn't, then it's sort of like off camera, you see Tom doing all like the face, crying face, and mocking the people who are about to leave, and kind of like these people are just playing with normal people's lives, man. Like
It's
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 like it's
so
a game.
crazy.
But like Greg, I mean, because Greg is like he's going to be with
Hmm.
Kendall and Roman because things aren't really looking good for Tom at the moment. But
But he has
he's
been
still
kind of
kind of with
detaching
Tom
himself from Tom
ish
lately,
because
though.
Tom
Like
has.
over the past few episodes, he's been slowly
Mm,
like backing away.
but Tom has no one else to confide in. That's the thing. So he's Tom would always look to Greg to just let everything out. I guess. Then in the party, he meets the Swedes and they take a liking to him because he's a
They
fucking
realize, oh, this
psychopath
guy
like
might
them.
actually be the fun one in the family, right? And that's hilarious to me because you know, Oscar, Madsen's number two, is very off kilter, played by
that guy, that guy's
Johannes
very.
Hawker
I don't like that guy,
Johannesson,
man.
who I mentioned before. I didn't his name slipped my mind at that time, but yeah, he plays Olaf in Vikings Valhalla. It was very great, very good show. A good sequel show to the
Hmm.
original Vikings series that was produced by History Channel. This Vikings Valhalla is set about 100 years after the death of one of the central characters of the show. I'm gonna keep that under wraps in case somebody wants to go watch Vikings because that is actually still a worthwhile show.
Just spoil it for them. Don't worry.
But yeah, like he, as Matson said, Oscar is on he's on edibles, right? And he's just running on vibes. Like the running on vibes energy from the previous episode has been
He's
brought
just
here.
running, man.
And you can see how he is just like
Hmm.
loopy. Matson is mischievous, and Ebba is like, I just want to leave.
These
I
guys,
just want to leave because
I just want to
all the
get
things that
out.
she said, I wondered what would
I'm
actually,
tired.
come out because, Matson has been having conversations with Shiv, and the blood thing there's no way nobody knows about that. Like, there's absolutely no way. So the fact that they got their quote unquote deputy ratfucker, right? First, I mean, all hail ratfucker Sam, who apparently has deputies now. And these guys are clearly skilled because, of course, they found out about Ebba. I mean, I at first I thought them finding out about that blood stuff would kind of make Shiv look untrustworthy to Matson, right? Because he would then be like, wow, so she really
Hmm.
went and told him about this. But that's not what happens, right? His first thought was, okay, is it Oscar or is it Ebba? And he kind of kept that like the brothers that obviously kept quiet about that, right? So I don't know, like it's
Do you feel there's more to
maybe
that
I don't.
coming
I think it
looking
depends
forward?
on what Ebba's role is going to be because in the end, I feel like she still ends up being a little bit loyal. I don't know if it's out of like allegiance to him or just because she wants to make sure she's doing her job properly because they're kind of like a pair, right? Even when
Well,
um so when after and like I guess we'll get into more detail on this, but Roman has a conversation with Jerry that really puts him in his place and sends him into the volatile
mhm,
state he was in the previous episode um again, and then he goes to tell Connor like, what are you doing, and he says a lot of mean things. Yeah,
fucking quit it,
at that
man.
time,
Everyone thinks you're
yeah,
a
at
joke.
that
Yeah,
time,
it's getting really
like if you
frustrated.
look, Martin and Ebba are just there in the background like house cats. Like he's on the window, she's on the couch, and they're just
Yeah,
sitting on the settee. And I knew it would lead to snide comments, but they're just there like watching and waiting and like just enjoying the situation. They're chill.
it's hanging
Yeah,
around
I,
like
I thought that was
shadows,
that was really
basically.
something.
Yeah,
So maybe they really are
it's
kind of like a
pretty.
pair because she clearly hates this guy, and I don't know why he keeps messing with her the way he is. Like I don't know why he can't just help himself.
It's
Meanwhile, Greg
fun.
is hilarious.
He's unique, man. Yeah, I think it's always just fun to him. I mean, should we get to kind of like what we eventually find out about? You did mention she was still loyal to him, but that
I thought it was
India,
cool that Kendall was able to get that out of her. Like Roman
it
was
was
asking some ridiculous direct questions,
yeah,
and Kendall's like, you know what? Let's pull up a smoke and just like chill for a little bit, and then he's able to get the information out.
yeah. Let's
Yeah,
let's just chill. Let's just chat. That's the
hmm
best way to start a conversation about
just
anybody.
relax.
Just have you got a lighter? And that's bang. You'll hear about their life story and everything, right? But I mean, so we sort of find out that Gojo's numbers
Two
are wildly
Indias.
devastating, and the numbers to India's, and he was, I mean, so when the brothers tell Shiv about it, she's kind of like, "What the fuck?" Like then she literally drags Matson out of the room, have a separate conversation about like your numbers are still here. It's like, oh yeah, it's like if we had two Indias, but
That is
there's only
insane.
one
He's done
India.
is like build a
So,
new India. What is
I watched
going
it like
on?
4 times, man.
Because with those kinds of inflated numbers, it's like the company's being bought by air, and I think that's where Shiv first, like, she finally comes to realization, like, yo, what am I doing? Like, am I really about to? I know that, like, I'm not particularly okay with all the stuff my family is doing or has done, but am I really about to sell out our legacy to somebody who has nothing? Like, there's no problem. I mean, of course, she asked for a very high position. She used three varies. We know that she's very serious, very, very, very serious.
Three very. It's like texting somebody and using like four. It's like texting somebody hey and
Essentially,
using like
right?
five
So, I
Y's,
mean,
and it's
the
like
fact
okay,
that even in that
yeah.
moment, she asked him about that significant role, and he needs a moment to think about it. That was a massive red flag to me. Was he not planning to give her a big role before? Like, why
That's
is that not just an immediate? Of course. Like, what was his plan with her?
which is why I was a bit. I'm going to flip. I was like, what is your plan? I guess your plan with him was to sort of get the deal over the line so you could come see her. But like, if you're having this conversation now, if you didn't have this conversation before, what
You
was the
didn't have
point of helping
assurances.
him? With all these leaks, like where were your guarantees? Like what the hell? So what are you doing this for? And it's just you just sort of witness the whole how just naive Shiv is, especially into this entire game, and how it's just she's you can see that she kind of realizes she's being played by Matson right now. I mean, his numbers must be insane though, like because India is
Yeah,
obviously quite like a
because
techie
it's a
place,
low budget market,
and you
and there are a
assume that
lot of
they'd
people,
have
a lot of
emerging
people.
markets in it. Yeah, numbers a lot of people, and I mean, gosh, that's I still can't believe that, man. And I mean, if their numbers are that bad, and that Kennedy is actually
Okay,
considering buying Gojo.
that one.
I wonder how the markets react. I
That's
wonder
just
how everyone
okay.
reacts to
I'll
that.
save that one for later because I now have to. Look.
No, let's talk.
No,
Let's
we
talk,
can, but the thing is,
let's talk
I
right
want to stay
now.
on Matson for a little bit and Ebba because it's not just the
Okay,
numbers that she
okay.
reveals. She talks about how he's not a real coder, that they built his whole reputation, right? And that's why
Oh
she's
yeah,
planning
yeah,
on
yeah,
being
that's
out in February. So basically,
true.
once the deal goes through, she's like, I
Oh,
want nothing to do with this anymore. See who's going to steer your ridiculous sinking ship, And I wonder, like, there was a part of me that was like, what if she was sent to plant seeds of misinformation? Like, what if she's actually still aligned with
okay,
Matson, but these grievances and her grievances are real, but she's still kind of working
okay.
for the greater good of their side. I don't know. I feel like it might not end up being that deep.
Or great good of her
Exactly.
though, because she might get a good payout. Because she said that
Hmm.
she's going to wait till February because that's kind of when her
Essentially,
golden
and
options would all be
at
realized or
this
something,
rate,
right? Something along those lines. Yeah.
the Gojo organization might be expanding because even if Emma leaves, I just get this strange feeling that Greg might become Matson's new head of HR because he's so good at firing people. but yeah, like, Kendall finding out this information and then saying he wants to pull a quote unquote reverse Viking. Now, could Waystar actually acquire Gojo? Right. This is kind of like, how do I put this? This is like a dog, like a good, well-bred dog, right, with flaws that barks at people. Maybe does like those kinds
Hmm.
of dogs that bark at people of color. You know them, right? Those dogs trying to kind of consume a wolf. Tactically, if you had enough finesse,
Okay.
maybe you could outsmart this wolf. But it's not that likely. Like, they're not big enough. They're not liquid enough. Their assets are losing value because even because as I've said before, the share price that Matson is offering for this acquisition is way, 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 way inflated, right? So is that really something that they can
Hmm.
do? Like, if maybe it's possible. Maybe it's possible if their numbers are actually as bad as we're hearing now, because that would not only mean that their value has dropped,
Hmm.
significantly, but it would also mean that if they leak that news, the share price of Gojo will go down. Like the stock will probably plummet, which would get it to a place where it can actually be bought.
Hmm.
But then I don't know. It could still be like an overvaluation thing, right? Where like for example, last year we all know about how Elon
Yes, I think
um,
got the
Elon
capacity.
Musk was trying to and did succeed in getting Twitter, right? Then yeah,
Well, he
and then he
pulled
got sued,
out,
and then he
then
had
he
to
got
do it.
sued,
And
and
I'm very
he
glad
had
that
to
happened, by the way,
eventually,
because if he was
yeah.
allowed to remove to like remove himself from that deal, then I fear for any other deal in the future. That just means that there are no guardrails anywhere. So, but anyway, that's another situation. But the reason I bring that up is he paid
On a
you
podcast.
know 54.20 per share, about $44 billion. Twitter itself at that time was
Hmm.
probably worth 22, right? So he overpaid, and which that's one of the reasons he was trying to leave, because he
Yeah,
realized it was overvalued. And I wonder, right?
like what the
I
fuck am I
wonder
doing?
if
Yeah,
them going for this Gojo thing is kind of like they're trying to do that same thing, but to their advantage. Whereas that undervaluation is something that they can root out and
okay,
show to the public and be like, okay, actually, we can get them. But my issue is, even if that works, even if that actually works,
yeah.
can they handle Gojo's assets? Do they have the people? Do they have the expertise? It's not their forte. Like I feel like they might even run Gojo into the ground. Like, do they know how to run something like Gojo? This would literally be like if something like CNN decided
Well,
to acquire Facebook, which is an impossibility, right? Right? It's an impossibility. So I don't know. Like, assuming
it's kind of like the other way around, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
assuming we said this was
I didn't
possible,
see an
could they
important
actually even make it work? I don't know. I
focusing.
don't think so. I'm not
Yeah,
sure that that could actually happen. Maybe, but I mean, a whole lot. There's just a whole lot of
yeah.
caveats in there.
I mean, it depends on how over inflated these subs numbers are. If half
Hmm.
of their subs are just air, then I think
Exactly,
we might
because
be having
India
a
it
completely
will be
different
one of their major
conversation
markets. So if
because
the numbers are
they
inflated
must be
there,
what
then what do they actually have?
they must be it must be really serious. It must be really serious if Shiv is
Oh, she
pulling
she really looked
Matson aside
spooked,
and saying this is some serious shit. But if it, she looked really spooked. But if you look, to Waystar and Kendall inflating or the figures
right?
for the Living Plus projections
Double the
and
earnings.
how all of that is still going on. It's sort of like this is all bullshit. It's bullshit fighting against. I mean, there was that scene between Kendall and Matson about how I know you're shit. You know I'm shit. So what the
Yeah,
hell are we doing right
yeah.
now? Like both of our numbers are pretty much nonsense, and it's just kind of like just staring match on, um, this acquisition that he wants to buy it, but
Hmm.
I'm not. Have you actually got the funds to buy it? But yeah, it was quite, quite, quite interesting. Very, very interesting. Um, I feel like the last bit. Whew, the last bit.
I was gonna
Actually,
say
before the last bit,
Roman,
let's talk
because
about let's talk about
right now we're
Roman
getting
actually
into
because
that
he had
part
this
where
scene
we
with Jerry.
focus on some of those core relationships, right? And I know we want to go into Tom and shit, but I agree we should talk about Roman and Jerry first.
That'll be the last. That'll be the yeah. I mean, because it's sort of real. Because he invited us
Not
to the
him
party. I think Frank
actually
tells her that she's
thinking that
coming later.
Frank
I
was
was like,
gonna
oh,
smooth things
just
over. And
getting
Frank tells him straight up, "Is like, yeah, she's pissed. Like, what? What did you expect to happen?"
like, what the hell do you expect? You just
For
kind of
fun,
you just fired her for
after
fun
Logan was already trying
because
to
you
fire
you
her,
know.
and his main reason supposedly was because she was getting close to Matson,
Hmm.
which might not be a bad thing for them. Like her understanding what those, because nobody on their side really seems to understand what's going on at Gojo. Jerry did. Why was that a bad thing?
No, yeah,
Yeah,
I really
I
don't
think
know. I
Jerry
think they
should
just handled
honestly
this Jerry thing
really
really badly.
just stay out. I like that she's taking it seriously. To be honest, good for her. There's no need to come back into
Hmm.
this dumpster fire. She should just stay
Yeah,
out, get her payout. She has, you know, a list of requirements, and she's made those clear. And I'm glad that she's communicating them. It's good for Roman to
and
see
a
like
lot
this
of
is not a joke. Like
Roman's
this is
penis
how you want to
pictures.
be.
Yeah,
This is what that means.
yeah, and Roman thinks it's like, oh, just come back. Let's just all hug it out and everything. And it's like, nope, no, no. I'm actually out and I'm actually being serious. And I feel like, because I have in my note here, like the only two people who actually, you know, get Roman to act
Hmm.
out are his dad, who isn't here anymore, and Jerry. And you can see immediately he acts out on Connor, who tells him to drop the shit. He becomes a lot more aggressive because before he
Trying to
was
be nurturing
quite,
and amenable.
quite accommodating,
Yeah,
quite
she showed his true
nurturing,
colors there, and it's
negotiating.
just this
And it's like,
volatility.
oh,
Like
let's
he's
do
not in
more.
a good place. Like he he's starting to actually. First, he was just exploding on regular people. And now he's doing it towards his own family. The funeral still has to happen. Lord knows what's going to go on there. Jerry has
Hmm.
personal reputation management now, which makes sense. That shows you that she's serious about what's going on. And he's starting to see that these actions have consequences, and if he's going to keep acting out towards people, he should see what that could look like for him. And it makes sense that the show is going out of its way to kind of give that to us, because everything is like, I called this episode at the beginning, when we started this conversation, a powder keg. It's the case in so many ways. Like, you have these relationships brewing, you have the deal that's like bubbling, you have Mattson's numbers. I mean, he has the gall to say, oh, maybe a little bit bullshit. Like,
Hmm.
this dude is just like a problem. And even then, you have in the actual world of the show, the information that they're getting out. You know, ATN released something saying that the Dems going up in the polls is a radical misinformation plot. What on earth? I mean, that's yeah. Like, it's
Going
it's
full on
it's it's
offensive now,
just
aren't they?
wild. Honestly, I feel like
It's crazy. It's supposed to
um
be news, isn't it?
that whole thing is crazy, and it's reminiscent of what would happen in the real world. But
Mhm.
we will have to I guess see how it goes. So yeah, it's crazy that Roman is being so mean, because I mean, first of all, he disrespects Willa. He calls her wife in air quotes, which is just,
Mhm.
bro, come on. You were at their wedding. Relax
Tell them how you really feel,
with the
Roman. Yeah.
vitriol. Like, I mean, Willa sincerely supporting him. One could say she's actually still in his camp. Somebody who's skeptical might say, you know, maybe she's just like egging him on to see him fail. Maybe she has a way of benefiting from that. But I do think she's committed to his camp. So we'll see. I think
Mhm.
it's a good thing
Yeah.
that Kendall showed up in that moment when he did, as Roman was disrespecting Connor.
Mhm.
Though I don't know. I mean, for all the good it did, right? He tells Matson, why don't you tweet about it after he finishes that whole outburst, and that's just, I don't know, like, that conflict didn't need to happen in that way. So I don't know why Roman is doing what he's doing. It's a problem. But then that leads into, of course, the Matson versus Kendall conversation, which just had a lot
Yeah.
of bangers. Like, there's so much going on in that conversation, and they were doing it in front of people. Like, it was just the right amount of cringe.
So main event show, yeah, for the evening,
Loved
and it
it.
was. I'm quite. I'm really, really interested now because I really don't have a clue on whether this deal goes through or not, because both numbers are fudgy and
Deals tend to
it's
die at least three times before anything actually goes through, and usually what goes through is not what anyone had in mind at the beginning.
at the beginning, yeah. So it's yeah. I guess we'll see what happens. I guess we'll see what happens.
But yeah, Tom and Shiv,
Should we get to
I know you have
Tom and Shiv?
thoughts.
Yeah. You really think everything is going well then? Father Sexmas, they're banging all the time, brings
He's
her
bringing
dinner.
her, like, these breakfasts at home. There's like
Sorry,
scorpions
breakfast, not
encased
dinner.
in.
What was that about,
What?
man? I was kind of like,
I loved that, because it's like it actually plays on just the general idea of Tom being bad at gift giving that is well established in this show, right from the first episode, where
gave Roman a watch,
he's
didn't
trying
you?
to give Logan that
Gave
watch,
him.
and he's like, what gift can I get someone that says, I like you.
I'm ri-
I want you to like me enough to know that I like you, but I need you to love me. It's just it was such
and
a
it's like
weird
you
thing,
can.
and them
So what's
playing
the watch
house is
for? It's like
hilarious.
anytime you look at it, it just reminds you of how rich you are or something. And I was like, okay,
Literally, I
all
don't know.
right, Tom, all right, Tom.
These people
Was it?
are interesting, especially Tom.
I mean, whilst they were having that back and forth, right, about okay, let's just all get it out there. Let's just get it out. Who do you tend to did he tend to agree more with one person or the other, or he kind of like, I mean, these two are both making fair points,
Well, I've kind of
and it's
always
like they're
supported
actually
Tom
both.
in this situation, at least in their
Hmm.
relationship, because he has tried to make things work. Like, yes, he's a bit of a social climber, but he's climbed well, and
Yeah.
he's not tried to climb without paying his dues. He's like, yeah, I know
Hmm.
that I'm coming up, using this situation to improve, my own standing, but
Hmm.
I'm giving my all as well. Like, I'm showing you love, I'm showing you commitment, devotion. I will back you.
Hmm.
If you back me, I will
Hmm.
back you. Like, let's be a team. He always wanted to be a team. He wanted them to rise
Hmm.
together, but she has never really given that to him. She sees him as, well, something she doesn't really respect, and she only really respects him when
She
he's
doesn't
acting
respect
kind
him
of
at all.
callous, which just
Yeah.
shows you how messed up she is, because her own view of love, or her own view of what's attractive, is, you know very toxic. I've heard before,
Hmm.
someone said that, you know every girl ends up marrying some version of her father, and I think that does make a little bit of sense, because your father is the person that you, like, your first example of what a man should be, right? That's the example you're
Okay.
most exposed to. So it's
Hmm.
different for people who don't have great relationships with their fathers, but like, those people even end up getting a person that maybe is not like their father in like all the pivotal ways. Essentially, whoever your father is, whatever man raises you, that person informs the decision you make as to who you actually end up with, one way or another. And
Hmm.
for Shiv, seeing someone like Logan, her entire childhood, just you know treat people as though they're fit to be discarded. It makes sense that she would find that kind of behavior attractive in Tom. He's been doing a lot of
Hmm.
stuff lately that's just very, like, out of the way, saying things that he normally wouldn't have said. And the fact that it's essentially turning her on is just like a weird thing. But it makes a lot of sense when you really look at their characters. I mean, the playful text they've been sending, I mean, yeah, I guess we're happy for both of you, but at some point you have to talk about what's real, and that's what ends up happening here. And even though, like I said,
Very real
I normally
conversation.
side with him, I can't
Hmm.
help but feel like he went too far in some places here, because now, I guess, now he has some clarity, and he feels equipped or justified to attack in ways that, normally he probably wouldn't. Or maybe these are things he's thought the whole time and has just, like, kept underneath. Like, it's hard to say, but I think both of them come off pretty broken at the end of this.
Yeah, you sort of see the end of the episode where they're kind of just like both lying in the separate beds
Separate
and everything, and
bedrooms
you can
in
see
this
just like the
gigantic
sadness,
place.
and you can just see the sadness in their face. I mean, yeah, that was a pretty intense scene, wasn't it? I mean, I feel the bit that obviously got to Shiv the most was when Tom told him that
She should never have
you will
kids.
not
She's not
be,
fit.
she should never have a good mother. She's not fit
Ooh,
to
man.
have kids. And you can see that really,
And I was, it's so
you
sad,
know,
because I was really thinking
went through the
this
heart.
would be the episode where she tells him she's pregnant, but now that is not gonna happen because of what he's just said.
I was,
Mm.
I was going to ask you about that actually. So when is Shiv going to
I
tell
don't
him
know at
like
this point.
what's going on?
Right now, I'm glad neither of them pushed the other one off that balcony. I'm glad they're both still alive.
Honestly,
The way that thing was going,
it's.
obviously that whole thing strikes a nerve. What he said, because you know it is very reminiscent. It's in the same vein as what her mother was saying
Mhm.
about how she herself shouldn't have had kids. She should have had dogs, and that Shiv always knew how to twist the knife, trying to make her feel that
Yeah.
she's worse than her. And somebody else saying that without knowing about that conversation is just the kind of thing that can really break a person. Um, Tom says stuff like, it's not his fault that she couldn't win Logan's approval, and that is true. Like, it's not his fault. Like,
Mhm.
she shouldn't take that out on him. But at the same time, like, he didn't have to really weaponize that against her in that way. I don't know why things got so vitriolic right at that moment. He said that, like, it
Well,
doesn't
she
work because
was
she's broken.
shitting on
She
Tom.
was, I mean, and I
She
don't
was
even know why she's
shitting
going
on
she's
Tom the
going
entire
around,
party.
like, trying to make it seem like he's getting fired. And this is something he's actually warned her about before. why are you making me the butt of the joke for an agenda that I'm not even a part of? Like, in all honesty, do they really gain anything from like spreading this rumor that Tom might be getting canned? Like in his own house,
It was
people are here
pretty
laughing
insane.
about
Yeah.
laughing at him, whispering about his fate. It's just not, it's not nice.
It's not nice. It's not a nice
Like, come on,
feeling.
like it,
And you're sort of in the dark, but like,
and
what the
she
hell
and
is
she
going
comes and
on?
she's
And
like, yeah,
everyone is in
it's
on
just
it,
like a
and
joke, da 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 da. And he's like,
just a
why are you
joke. And it's
doing
like,
this? Like every single time, so many times in this series, he's had to ask her, what are you doing? Like, what is the point of what you're doing right now? And she calls him a conservative hick, which is not nice, I guess.
I mean,
Well, I guess fine, but I don't know if that was attacking his whole like his
some good old classism
yeah,
for you over
like
here, wasn't it?
because first of all there's a thing with the wine and that kind of sports that maybe that made her say that, but obviously she's just weaponizing the idea that he's the one that married up, which he is. I mean, he doesn't quote unquote know everything about being rich, as Buckley would say, um, with his
Mm.
overly white shoes. But he says that he doesn't understand why they got here in the first place. Like he says, you shouldn't even have married me. And that's something that maybe even viewers have said before. Like it's a fair point. Why did you actually marry him? And obviously, we know the reason. It's because she wanted something safe, something she could control, something steady, while she went around being someone participating in the general volatility of her family situation. But
Mhm.
from his point of view, it's like, did I have? I knew I was going to be here, but did I have to end up here in this way? Like, how has this really helped me? You know, they're talking about all these different aspects of their relationship that have not helped either of them, and they're going back and forth. And the one that actually, the line that probably like hit me the most, not just because of of how like deep it is, like deep cutting it is, but also because of just the general poetry of it, just the nice writing. He says that she's too transparent to find in a book, which was wow. I was like, no, I actually had to pause and
Oof,
think about that one for a moment.
Tom was cooking,
He
man. It
was
was just
cooking.
just a very intense scene,
Jeez,
wasn't it? It was,
jeez.
yeah. I don't know, man. Like they always had. I mean, kind of. They had a scene like that, not like this, but the episode before where Tom kind of comes clean and says that I've never had money in my
Hmm.
life, and I haven't got
Yeah, that
anything
was
to
last
worry
week.
about. That was last week, and you think everything is all going well, finally come clean to each other. But like this one was, these are our real
Yeah, and it
feelings,
seals
aren't
his
they? Like
fate,
this
right?
is,
Because after that, he comes out and he's like telling everybody to leave his house, and he's not joking, but people are still standing around.
so. What was behind his tiredness? Because he's been tired all
I mean, because he
episode.
runs ATN, right? ATN is doing quite a lot of stuff right now.
The
He's
elections, yeah,
actually
he
busy
was,
at
yeah.
work. Like genuinely, he's busy at work, and everybody else is dilly dallying.
Plus he's been
So
plus he's been
yeah,
busy in the
yeah,
bedroom as
there's
well.
that too. Man's not sleeping, but at least he's exercising, I guess. Either way,
Yeah, burn them
it's
calories,
it's
I
really
guess,
does
or
seal his fate
whatever.
because now, like as he's passing by and they're talking about him, the siblings they look at each other and they say "fuck Tom," right? So now he might actually get
Yeah,
fired. Like this is turning into a self fulfilling
like
prophecy.
a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, it's, oh man, that's so peak for Tom, man. Because trying to do, I mean, to be fair, like he's. How do you feel? Do you think he's aligned himself with Matson then,
I think he
or
wants to align himself with Matson. Aligning himself with Matson will be
and he tried
helpful,
to kiss
but
his
but
ass
now
early
now
on?
Tom is kind of in the middle because he's not particularly on solid footing with Matson, and now his position with the Roys is
Hmm.
precarious at best. So yeah,
Fuck Tom,
I
yeah.
Kendall's trying to
It's
manage this situation. His conversation with Frank, I don't know. It's reminding me of like old patterns because he gets these ideas that he tells Frank because Frank is like a voice of reason, right?
it's
Yeah,
Godfather as well,
and
isn't it?
there's so much that could come from that. I wonder if there's any real weight to that whole reverse Viking thing, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Um, he's still trying to manage
Watch the episode.
Matson himself. I know at one point he tells because that's how Greg gets there in the first place, right? Gets to Matson, he's like, point his dick in the direction of some fissile material, like find him a blonde, which is just wild, Kendall, wild. But at the same time, controlling the people that are involved is like the first step to really being in control of the situation. But the idea that they can control
Hmm.
Matson is still laughable at best.
He's very, very
Yeah,
erratic, isn't he? He's very, very this thing. Okay. That was a really fun
truly.
episode.
Any final
I
thoughts on
really
your
enjoyed
part?
that. Can't wait. Mm, I don't know, man. I just really enjoyed it. I know I've said it multiple times,
It was
but
fun. I mean, clearly you had the
this
time to watch
was
it four
this was
times.
so fun.
Three
Three
times.
times, three
Okay.
times. Just three times. Just three times. Yeah.
I can't even
I'm
lie. I'm
really.
about to watch it again.
I mean, next week is the next week is the
Supposedly the election and
election,
the
isn't it?
funeral
So,
together. I'm guessing the two things will happen.
and the funeral. So I'm guessing Mencken would be back
Yeah, because we've been
for
seeing
this
because
episode.
he
So
really shows up in the trailers, right? But we've not really actually seen
mhm.
him yet. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I feel like it's like yours just sort of building him up, building him
Hmm.
up, building him up onto. I've probably seen him in the last couple of episodes, like the shark and Jaws. So
Yeah, because I mean, Justin,
yeah, I guess we'll
I really
see.
did think about that again, and because every episode I'm wondering where is Mencken in this episode, like in the credits,
Hmm.
Justin Kirk
Hmm.
is credited as like being in the cast, like he's put there as a guest star, and I'm like, like was he actually here? Are they just guests? Are they just crediting everyone who is involved? Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they can't be bothered to just separate, just like crediting in all the
Yeah,
episodes. Like, yeah, just put it
but
in.
anyway,
But
it's cool. It's cool, I
yeah, that
guess.
was
So, um, thanks to everyone who's listened up to this point. We appreciate you, and we're glad you're on this journey with us. We have just 3 episodes left
thank
of
you.
what is one of the best series of clearly the past decade. It's great to be covering this right now.
Is it 3 or
I
2?
think it's 3 because this was episode 7, and I'm pretty sure they're
7.
doing 10.
I didn't
Yeah,
tell. I
they're
thought I
doing
did
10.
9. My bad.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be quite a ride. We'll see how things go as we continue to explore the aftermath of the death of the juggernaut that is Logan Roy. Stick with us, and while you're sticking with us, please check out everything else that we're covering. We are on the full spectrum of um of TV content right now. We just started coverage of Love and Death. Bankley and Comfort are having some really interesting conversations there. We are also covering Ted Lasso. I've been moonlighting, talking with the boys over there about everything going on at AFC Richmond and everything that isn't going on at AFC Richmond.
Go Richmond.
At
Pardon me?
AFC Richmond, yeah.
Yeah, good old
Because
Richmond. And they play
yeah, I
Arsenal as
mean
well
when they
this
played
season.
Arsenal and they were actually at the Emirates last week, I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, and of course we are still covering Yellow Jackets, which is just another powder keg to say the least. And now our film only podcast hosted by Priscilla and Jess, Is This Cinema, has been released. So they're going to be giving you amazing movie takes over the next several weeks, in addition to our coverage of Barry. So yeah, anything you want, it's
Talk
all
on, man.
here. So keep it locked to the
Well here,
feed,
well here.
and join us next time, where we probably won't be joined by Daniel Kaluuya, but we'll be here with someone just as fun. Trust me. See ya.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.